राष्ट्र सर्वोपरि, देश ही हो जिसकी पहचान से हैं भारत के वीर जवान। अब पर्वत भी नहीं डिगा सके इनके हौसलों को, जिन्होंने किया कतरा कतरा देश के नाम। बने भारत के अग्निवीर।
It was a widely anticipated announcement. Rajnath Singh, the Union Minister for Defence, addressed a press conference on the 14th of June, together with the three service chiefs, launching the Agnipath initiative, something the government described as a transformative move towards recruiting more youth into the armed forces.
I'm an officer in the Indian Army.
अग्निपथ योजना के अंतर्गत यह प्रयास किया जा रहा है कि इंडियन आर्म्ड फोर्सेस का प्रोफाइल पूरी तरह से यूथफुल हो। यूथफुल प्रोफाइल से यह फायदा भी होगा कि उन्हें नई नई टेक्नोलॉजी आसानी से ट्रेन किया जा सकेगा और उनकी हेल्थ और फिटनेस का लेवल भी काफी बेहतर होगा। साथियों, इस अग्निपथ योजना से एम्प्लॉयमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटीज बढ़ेंगी और अग्निवीर सेवा के दौरान अर्जित स्किल्स एवं एक्सपीरियंस उन्हें विभिन्न क्षेत्रों में एम्प्लॉयमेंट भी प्राप्त कराएगा।
This is a strictly voluntary exercise, one that is gender neutral, but allows youth between the ages of 17 and a half to 21 to serve in the armed forces for a period of 4 years. That age limit has now been extended to 23. Once this tenure has been served, the concerned Agniveers, as they're called, would be eligible to apply for regular recruitment into the armed forces, and of all applicants, 25% would be shortlisted for selection. For those who aren't, the Agnipath initiative would provide adequate skills to not only integrate into civil society and professional life, but also provide an accumulated corpus including interest to the tune of rupees 11.71 lakhs to ensure that the transition into civilian life and jobs is smooth.
The Indian Air Force is looking to tap into this source of dynamic young people, train and expose them to high technology environment of the Indian Air Force, and hone their skills for future employment. The new scheme therefore gives the Air Force an opportunity to draw from the vast pool of talent available in the country so that they can serve in the nation's armed forces with pride. This therefore emerges as a win-win situation, with the Air Force benefiting from both the Agniveers, who have many options after 4 years, and those who will be joining the Air Force as permanent service members.
The Agniveers would earn rupees 21,000 in hand per month in their first year, rupees 23,100 in the second, rupees 25,580 in the third, and rupees 28,000 in the fourth. The government plans to begin the first recruitment cycle in 3 months' time, with the first group of Agniveers beginning their course in July next year.
To start with, I'll list out a few of the challenges that we visualize coming up as we move forward. Firstly, is the requirement to modify and refine our current recruitment process, essentially to expand the recruiting base. We also need to identify and select the right ITI qualified youth for induction into our technical trades. Optimizing the recruitment training period is another issue that we are currently examining. As I mentioned earlier, assimilation and integration of the Agniveers into the system is an important aspect, and that is something which we are working at.
The Seva Nidhi corpus would be exempt from income tax, and while serving their 4-year tenure, the recruits will be provided a non-contributory life insurance cover of rupees 48 lakhs. The rationale as explained by the government is thus, and I quote, "It will provide an opportunity to the youth who may be keen to don the uniform by attracting young talent from the society who are more in tune with contemporary technological trends and plow back skilled, disciplined and motivated manpower into the society. As for the armed forces, it will enhance the youthful profile of the armed forces and provide a fresh lease of Josh and Jazba, while at the same time bring about a transformational shift towards a more tech-savvy armed forces, which is indeed the need of the hour. It is envisaged that average age profile of the Indian Armed Forces would come down by about 4 to 5 years by the implementation of the scheme.
Giving youth a chance for both long and short duration military service. आर्म फोर्सेस में प्रोफाइल की नेसेसिटी है, जैसा कि अभी हमारे रक्षा मंत्री ने बताया। हमारी आज की एवरेज एज तकरीबन 32 साल है, जो आगे आने वाले टाइम पे ये 26 चली जाएगी, 6 से 7 साल में। In order to transform the armed forces into youthful, tech-savvy, modern, there is a need to harness the youth potential and make him a future-ready soldier. Agniveers इस future-ready soldier का हिस्सा होगा। अग्निवीर भारत का युवा रक्षक होगा। हमारे साथ 4 साल रहने के बाद एक अग्निवीर का रिज्यूमे और बायोडाटा बिल्कुल यूनिक होगा। He will stand out in the crowd with his attitude, tour, skills, and the time he would have spent with us.
The nation stands to immensely benefit by the infusion of highly inspired youth with deeper understanding of self-discipline, diligence, and focus, who would be adequately skilled and will be able to contribute in other sectors.
A welcome initiative on the part of state governments and the ministry to offer people weeded out from the army to be absorbed into the police, paramilitary forces, state government jobs, metro rail security, in other organizations. But we have to move away from this obsession in this country with sarkari jobs. This is to address the problem of the army's requirement of certain amount of manpower, which needs to be fulfilled because the army sends home about 45 to 50,000 people every year. So similar amounts of people have to come back into the army till the army comes up with a plan how to trim itself down and make itself leaner and meaner.
Like most things in India, the Agnipath initiative has also triggered debate. Its advocates say this will contribute towards a younger and fitter armed forces. It may help groom leadership abilities in individuals. It will also provide them basic military training. Moreover, those Agniveers who do not get recruited in the armed forces following the completion of their course may apply to the police and the central paramilitary forces. This is something that even the Union Home Minister Amit Shah has mentioned. The Ministry of Education has also said that in-service training received by Agniveers will be considered as credits for graduation. State governments have stepped forward and talked about preference for Agniveers in state police and related services. The initiative will also help partly address the issue of unemployment among youth and also keep the defence budget in check.
4 साल की अवधि की पूरा होने पर अग्निवीर अपनी पसंद की नौकरियों में अपने भविष्य बनाने के लिए कॉरपोरेट और इंडस्ट्री, सीएपीएफ यानी केंद्रीय सशस्त्र पुलिस बल और रक्षा सार्वजनिक क्षेत्र यानी पब्लिक सेक्टर अंडरटेकिंग्स सहित अन्य क्षेत्रों में रोजगार के लिए डिसिप्लिन, डायनेमिक और मोटिवेटेड और स्किल्ड फोर्स बनकर समाज में, सोसाइटी में जाएंगे.
As per reports, India's budget in 2022-23 was rupees 5.25 lakh crore, of which 1.25 lakh crore accounted for pensions. Many believe that the Agnipath project would help prioritize the budget towards modernization of military infrastructure and equipment.
Now that the policy, the new recruitment policy has been announced by the government, now the Indian Armed Forces have to manage the change because the stage for discussion is over. And now we are into the implementation stage. We will have to capitalize on the advantages of this scheme because surely there are many advantages, a lower youthful profile, better junior leadership because only top 25% will be retained, reduced load on the salaries and pensions bill. So there are advantages. So we need to capitalize on the advantages, but there are challenges. And we need to see how best change management is done, how best the challenges are met, and how best we allay the apprehensions that are there in the minds of old soldiers like me.
Essentially, the idea was to fulfill the requirement of manpower that the army would be losing every year because of people retiring. But this may not be the best way to do it. It is only a financially astute idea because you don't have to have these people with you, these 40-odd thousand people, for the rest of their lives, or at least next 20 years. You would be weeding them out and keeping only 25% of that lot, which is about 10,000 people. So that would gradually make the army lesser in numbers and reduce the pay and pension burden on the army, which is very, very high. But also, there is an idea that some of these people could be molded into becoming tech savvy, and therefore more technology would be brought in to man physical positions in the army, whether it's on the border or inside the country. So that way, the army would become more tech-oriented and less manpower-oriented. But this shift will take years and years. It's not going to happen overnight.
उस स्कीम से हमें प्रॉब्लम है।
क्यों उनका बाप का नौकरी है क्या?
But there have been protests in different parts of the country, Bihar witnessing serious violence. Those protesting have spoken out against the uncertainty of a job following the completion of the 4-year tenure, and others who, despite having appeared for recruitment and passed their physical test 2 years ago but are still to be accepted, have voiced opposition to those younger than the age of 21 now being given an opportunity.
अग्निपथ स्कीम को लेकर बिहार के लगभग 2 दर्जन से अधिक जिलों में भारी उपद्रव दिखा है, जहां पर जो छात्र हैं वो सड़कों पर उतरे हैं और अपना विरोध जताया है। और सबसे ज़्यादा टारगेट अगर किया गया है तो वो रेलवे को किया गया है। अभी हम आरा रेलवे स्टेशन पर मौजूद है और सबसे ज़्यादा क्षति यहाँ पर की गई है। आप देखिए तस्वीर किस तरह से यहाँ पर तोड़फोड़ जो है वो छात्रों के द्वारा किया गया है। बड़ी संख्या में छात्र यहाँ पर विरोध के लिए पहुँचे थे। और देखिए जो शीशे हैं स्टेशन के अंदर, एंट्री गेट है ये, और यहाँ पर जो तमाम शीशे हैं वो तोड़ दिए गए हैं। नीचे आप जमीन पर देखिए किस तरह के हालात हैं यहाँ पर।
Look at this. These are big bricks have come in. And look at the courage of these government officials who are still on their chair. ये अभी भी अपने चेयर पे काम कर रहे हैं क्योंकि इनको पता है कि इनके पीछे ये जो टीवी स्क्रीन है, विभव अगर आप दिखा सकें, ये जो टीवी स्क्रीन है ये वो लाइन है, ये वो महत्वपूर्ण लाइन है जो कई हजार लोगों की जान बचाती है। ये वो लाइन है जिससे लोगों की जिंदगी बचती है। सर कैसे आप लोग यहाँ पे मौजूद है, भाई जी बताएं।
क्या हुआ, हम लोग थोड़ा सा दरवाजा ऐसे बंद हल्का रखा, उन लोग 500 की संख्या में आया, इतने पत्थर उथर फेंकने लगा कि हम लोग को यहाँ जान बचाना भी मुश्किल हो गया। लास्ट में हम लोग को ऊपर से भी इंस्ट्रक्शन था, हम लोग यहाँ दरवाज़ा बंद करके जान बचाया। जब उन लोग भाग गए 12 बजे के करीब में, तो हम लोग निकल के अपना काम में लगे, असेंटिंग वगैरह करने लगे। जो गाड़ी हमारा फरक्का जल गया था उसके इंजन को काट करके पुश किया, रियर पोर्शन को क्लियर किया। सर उस स्कीम से हमें प्रॉब्लम है। उसके पहले सर हमने हैदराबाद में भर्ती निकाला है, उसके कारण हमें बहुत ज़्यादा प्रॉब्लम हो रही है। हमने हैदराबाद में जाकर वहाँ रुक कर रोड पे सोकर हमने भर्ती करा था सर। हमने जनवरी में भर्ती देखा था वहाँ पर सर, जनवरी 4 को भर्ती देखा था। और सर 8 को सर उसका मेडिकल हुआ था, मेडिकल भी हमने पास किया, ग्राउंड फिट मेडिकल पास किया हमने। उस समय से लेकर अब तक सर हम इंतज़ार कर रहे थे रिटर्न कब होगा। रिटर्न के लिए हमने यहाँ पर सागर इंस्टीट्यूट में सर हमने क्लासेस भी लगाया था, उस समय से हम अब तक पढ़ी रहे हैं। यहाँ भी हमने क्लासेस लगाया था। अचानक सुनने में आया कि स्कीम अग्निपथ स्कीम के कारण हमें वो रिटर्न कैंसिल करना पड़ा।
हम सर सरकार से ये अनुरोध करेंगे कि टीओडी वापस लो, क्योंकि ये 4 साल के पीछे मंशा है सरकार की कि हम पेंशन को रद्द कर दें, और साथ साथ युवा जो 4 साल बाद निकलेंगे अपनी मेंटली प्रेशर के साथ निकलेंगे और बहुत से अनहोनी घटना कर देंगे।
देखिए तोड़फोड़ हुआ, बहुत गलत हुआ, इसका हम विरोध करते हैं। बच्चों को शांतिपूर्ण तरीके से प्रोटेक्ट करना चाहिए। जो हम लोग कल यहाँ मनोज मंजी जी के नेतृत्व में जो आरा में प्रोटेक्ट करेंगे, शांतिपूर्ण तरीके से करेंगे। पिछले 8 मई को भी हम लोग किया था और पूरे भारत में ये संदेश गया था।
Parties like the Congress and the RJD have taken a categorical stand against Agnipath.
ये डिफेंस सर्विसेज और देश के सुरक्षा व्यवस्था के साथ फिर एक और खिलवाड़ हो रहा है। जो इसके विशेषज्ञ हैं, जो सेना के चीफ रह चुके हैं, उन लोगों की राय ये है कि 8 साल कम से कम लगते हैं ट्रेनिंग देने में। तो ये 4 साल की ट्रेनिंग दे के ये क्या हासिल करना चाहते हैं?
75% जो बच्चे सेना की इस नियमावली के तहत छट जाएंगे, उनका भविष्य क्या होगा? उनके द्वारा अन्य प्रतियोगिता परीक्षा में किस तरह से सम्मिलित होने का उपाय होगा? क्या सरकार की ओर से उनको कोई प्रोत्साहन नीति दी जाएगी?
Many, including retired officers of the armed forces, have expressed reservations. Does the Agnipath initiative compromise, even to a small extent, the competence and ability of the members of the armed forces, given the well-oiled, highly trained professional soldiers that they are? While the details of whether Agneeveers will be deployed near sensitive areas of our borders with Pakistan and China are not yet known, is the Agnipath project really providing an extremely motivated cadre of troops when it is known that only 25% of them would go on to serve the armed forces in a permanent capacity?
My operational record and my operational experience in Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, in in the Siachen Glacier, in Sri Lanka and places like that. And I can tell you this, 36 weeks of training or 24 weeks of training. The soldier at 24 weeks is fairly well formed. And I would love to get a soldier with 24 weeks for on-the-job training in my unit, cutting down his overall time, which he spends at the regimental center. And if 36 weeks had been an acceptable thing, obviously 4 years service would not have made any sense at all. Not that it's making any sense even at the moment. People are all looking at it slightly longer, tweaking it slightly longer. But 24 weeks, a soldier is reasonably well formed, and I can make effective use of him on the line of control.
Also, when talking about skilling the Agniveers, not just for further recruitment in the army, but also civilian life, what specific set of skill sets are being discussed here? To reiterate, this is not conscription. There are those who have said that in the ongoing Ukraine war, the poor performance of Russian conscripts is something that has been exposed. In 2008, the tenure for Russian conscripts was reduced from 24 months to 12. Lieutenant General Satish Dua makes a similar point in his column in the Times of India, wherein he refers to the US war in Vietnam and the reliance on conscripts that contributed to its defeat, despite superiority in weaponry and technology.
Conscripted soldiers are those which is a compulsory service. It happens in Israel, it happens in Russia, it happens in several countries. So everyone has to serve the term. So when everyone has to serve the term, naturally it cannot be a lifelong career because you're forcing all citizens to work or to do a tenure, a tour of duty as it's called, in the army or armed forces before they launch into their profession. So the parallel that I've drawn there is when there are shorter term of duties, that means a soldier is there for 2 to 4 years or any such limited duration. It takes a long time for soldier to do on-job training on one hand, that is getting his professional competence, and on the other hand, to really imbibe that spirit. When we went into combat, when I was a commanding officer, so we could draw back on a lot of our associations that, a few years ago, we were in such a situation in the LOC or on Siachen Glacier. So there is a lot of bonding that takes place over time. So that is the difference that I was trying to, or that is the kind of a lesson that I was trying to draw in that article of mine.
Many former armed forces members have also batted for a smaller scale pilot project to be rolled out before a full-scale induction process is executed.
This new scheme of or new policy of recruitment of soldiers, sailors and airmen is a very radical departure from the past. It's not tweaking a small terms of service here and there or making some additionalities, which we have been doing. Those are incremental adjustments. But since this is a radical departure, this is a totally different way of doing things that we haven't tried, not in the last 70 years, 70 decades of our independence of a country's history, but also the armies are centuries old, and we have never tried this earlier. So that is why I said that it would be better if we did a pilot project and then take a feedback from the environment and then roll it out or tweak it if need be.
Whenever you have a new, something very new coming out, you do look at a pilot scheme, test it out for a year, 2 years, or whatever it is. I think one of the reasons why this perhaps was not done in this case was that the pandemic, last 2 years, has affected us so badly. There was very little time for this government to actually work a thing like this out and take it to its finality, take it to any successful conclusion as such. 2 years have gone by. No recruitment has taken place, and no recruitment rally has taken place. Perhaps if the pandemic had not come, the decision may have been announced in 2019 and the rollout would have started in 2020. So we are 2 years behind time as it is. That's one of the reasons why they thought that perhaps it's best to roll out the scheme and then await a feedback. And I'm sure that system of a feedback and then tweaking and keeping up the flexibility, all that system of management will be gone through.
There are those who have wholeheartedly batted for this initiative. B.D. Mishra, a retired brigadier who's now the governor of Arunachal Pradesh, spoke to Times Now about the merits and sought to allay the concerns being expressed.
This Agnipath scheme which is launched, I think it is in the interest of the nation. It is in the interest of the combat efficiency of the Indian Armed Forces, that is Army, Navy and Air Force. And also, it is in the interest of the youth who come forward, get selected, and they join the armed forces. And even those 75% who go out after 4 years service, it is in their interest also. One more thing I want to tell you, that after its announcement, I come from a very rural area. And from my own village, people are enthusiastic and they are going to come and join. And the apprehension or doubt that it is going to become a conscript army, far from reality. It is far from reality. Actually, it will be very motivated, young, combat ready, and risk prompt army.
The jury is out on how this will turn out, but the fact of the matter is that this is an attempt at change, and it is presumably a long thought out exercise that is now being put into motion. The three services are all on board. How will this pan out?